Russian Colonel Abdulaziz Shakhabadov, who commanded the 76th Guards Airborne Assault Division of the Russian Air Force, has been killed in Ukraine, Russian media reported on Tuesday. Shakhabadov, born in 1986, was appointed commander of the 76th Division by President Vladimir Putin on March 10, 2025, and took a direct part in Russia's full-fledged invasion of Ukraine. It should be noted that prior to being appointed to this position, Shakhabadov participated in the battles in South Ossetia and Syria. He was awarded 3 Orders of Courage and the Order of Suvorov, as well as medals for courage of the 1st and 2nd degrees and for services to the fatherland. Russian telegram channels reported that Shakhabadov has already been buried at the Troyekurovsky Cemetery in capital Moscow. It should be noted that the military official was the graduate of Ryazan Higher Airborne Command School and Combined Arms Academy of Russian Armed Forces. Shakhabadov is the latest senior military official killed in Ukraine. Ukrainian troops have been relentlessly targeting Russian military officials involved in Ukraine's full-fledged invasion that started in February 2022.
Ukrainian and international human rights activists have repeatedly accused the Russian army of deliberately killing Ukrainian soldiers who voluntarily surrendered. According to the norms of international humanitarian law, primarily the Geneva Conventions, such persons should be considered prisoners of war and provided with protection. Russian troops do not adhere to these standards, despite the international reaction. This is reported by the New York Times. 5 Ukrainian drone operators have shared accounts of watching drone footage of their comrades surrendering and then being shot. Some Russian servicemen are so unafraid of responsibility that they themselves post such videos on social media. Journalists recall the incident near Pokrovsk when 16 Ukrainians who had laid down their arms were shot on September the 30th. The video recorded by the Ukrainian prosecutor's office was of such high quality that one of the mothers was able to recognize her son. This phenomenon is especially horrific because of the ability to record events in real time. Whereas war crimes were previously identified after the fact, drones now make it possible to document human rights violations as they occur. Since August, according to the UN mission, 29 cases of killings of at least 91 Ukrainian servicemen who were no longer able to resist have been documented. By comparison, during the same period, 1 case of execution of an incapacitated Russian soldier has been recorded. Some military analysts said the Russians may have been trying to scare potential Ukrainian recruits out of joining the army and make Russian soldiers think twice about surrendering because the Ukrainians might want revenge, the article said. Drone operators who witnessed these events admit that the worst thing is the feeling of helplessness. We could do nothing to help our people. We did not speak polite words. We were full of rage and a strong desire for revenge, another operator emphasized. Let us recall that according to the SBU investigation on June the 17th, 2024, Russian commanders gave their subordinates the order to shoot a Ukrainian prisoner of war and then cut off his head and put it on the hood of a destroyed Ukrainian armored vehicle. This happened during fighting near the village of Staromayorsk in the Volnovakha district. The SBU identified the persons who gave the criminal order. In Russia, murderers and rapists are returning from war without a term, without supervision, without breaks, with PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. According to the Washington Post, criminals pardoned for participating in the war with Ukraine are returning home and starting to kill again. Russia has become the only country in modern Europe where participation in the war has become an official way to avoid prison for murder, rape, and torture. Since 2022, thousands of prisoners, including especially dangerous criminals, have been recruited into the army with the promise of freedom in exchange for service in assault units. The survivors are released and return. As the Washington Post reports, criminals who have been through the front are committing new crimes en masse in peaceful Russian cities. There is no rehabilitation system. There is no psychological support. There is no control. There is only a knife, PTSD and impunity. On February the 9th, 2025, in Achinsk, a man stabbed his ex-wife's new partner to death and then tried to kill her himself. CCTV footage showed Kirill Chepligin, who had previously been convicted of violence, chasing the woman across a playground and stabbing her in the neck. Chepligin had previously applied to participate in combat operations to avoid imprisonment, a common procedure in Russia in recent years. The city's residents are in panic. Chepligin, like hundreds of others, could return home with weapons, combat experience and hatred without trial or time. A petition has already been launched against his possible return, but under conditions of militarized censorship, it is unlikely to be heard. According to the independent publication Verstka, since the beginning of the war, at least 754 people have fallen victim to violence by former military personnel, 196 of whom have been killed, and 76 of the murders were committed not by former prisoners but by contract soldiers who returned from the combat zone. In reality, journalists believe these figures are several times higher. The state is diligently erasing the traces of the heroes of the SVO. According to the Interior Ministry, there were 617,301 violent crimes registered in Russia last year, the highest number since 2014, and analysts say the culture of crime and impunity in the Russian military likely plays a major role in the rise in crime. That compares with 437,000 in 2017. Experts directly attribute this to the return of war veterans who have learned one thing: how to kill. In kitchens and closed chats, restrained rage is increasingly heard. People whose loved ones have fallen victim to the released killers no longer believe that what is happening is a coincidence. They are starting to curse Putin, realizing that it was he who opened the cage. It was he who made violence part of state policy. And although a direct charge can lead to a prison term, a terrible silent hatred is brewing inside Russia for the one who allowed the streets to be turned into a battlefield. The front has its own laws. Russian independent media and military bloggers report commanders zero soldiers, sending them on obviously deadly missions or simply kill them. Soldiers are put in earthen pits, tied to trees, beaten. Discipline is based on fear and pain. The command is corrupt. Drug addiction, drunkenness, corruption, rape, arms trafficking and extortion have become the norm. The soldiers who survive this return not as heroes, but as mentally broken machines of violence, unable to adapt to the world.